Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cloud-Based Mayhem. Recording this in Utah, doing some towing here with Cody, my tank, who I was just down in Texas with, doing a little bit of acro and SIV stuff. And 2 days after we got down to Texas, I believe, I think that was June 20th or so we were just kind of getting into it. I got an email from Jonathan Deach, who has sent me a bunch of great people to talk to on the Mayhem over the years. And he had sent me the article about Owen Morse, who had just broken that day on the 20th, the out and back record, world record out in the Owens. That record had been down in Chile for quite a while. Don't remember who to. He says it in the show here, but 222 miles on almost the longest day of the year in the Owens. And June 20th, it would have been pretty spicy. I'm sure super tall. Actually looked at the track log of that. He's got it up on Avery and stuff, but awesome flight from Walt's Point. So up the Sierras, cross over the Whites, out off the end of the Whites, and made it all the way home. And so very, very cool flight. And this record was something Owen had been chasing for 6 years. So we hear about his history and that chase and a bunch of cool stuff in regards to hang gliding, of course. But I also, when I was getting ready for the talk with Owen, realized that he is one of the most, or maybe the most famous jugglers on Earth. He and his partner have been doing this stuff for 32 years. They've been working together. They have performed for the Queen and Jay Leno and Johnny Carson. They've been on This America's, or Who's Got Talent show in the States. I think they've been on that twice. These guys throw knives and burning stuff and chainsaws, and they are a riot. It's a comedy show. It is awesome. You got to go to the show notes and check out all the links that we've put up there and all the videos they have. Of course, right now with COVID, they're not traveling around the world as they usually do performing, so they're doing it all from their studio in California. And so I guess that's probably where he spends most of his time, because to do what these guys are doing is just, man, it takes Malcolm Gladwell's thing totally out. They're way over 10,000 hours. It is remarkable what these guys do. Super fun. It was a riot. My daughter was just cracking up at these guys. So we talk a lot about juggling, and he not only has a couple world records now in hang gliding, but he's got at least 4 more in joggling. I think that's what it's called. I didn't know that was a thing, but that's running while juggling. And he has, like I said, 4 world records. But just to put this in perspective, he was having a talk with Usain Bolt, and he's like, "Hey man, so yeah, I've got a record kind of like yours." And Hussein's like, "Yeah, on, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I ran the 100 meters in 11.2 seconds while juggling 3 balls, and he's done the 100 meters in just over 13 seconds. This is all on the show, but I'm still just really excited about it, while juggling 5 balls. So incredible, insane talent, and a lot of fun. And really, you got to go to the show notes and watch some of these videos. This guy is just super fun, and his partner, they're obviously having a really good time. Met in college, and they've been doing this their whole life. So what a cool way to make a living, and you get to go hang gliding all the time. So enjoy this talk. I had a blast with this, and they go and did as well. I think you're going to enjoy it. Cheers.
Dozing off the TV drones. Husky makes the tournaments.
Owen, great to have you on the show. I was down in Texas. We had just gotten there a couple days before you absolutely sent it. I saw the news pop up in my USPA and then cross-country feed. 222 miles out and back in the Owens, new out and back world record. Congratulations. That just looked fast. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Sierras. Anything that happens in the Sierras is always just like, oh, yes.
Oh man, well, you are so kind. Let me just start by saying thank you for having me on your show. I am a huge fan, and I love what you're doing with Cloud-Based Mayhem. And yeah, I'm still pinching myself about that flight. And it was a dream come true, and to date, my best flight for sure.
Yeah, and I read the article. There were several about it. It sounds like this is something you've been chasing for a while.
Yeah, for 6 years. I saw I don't know, it would have been close to 15 years ago, I think. George Stebbins set the out and back world record in the Owens, 100 miles out and back. And that sort of captured my imagination and just went, my goodness, that is so, so cool. And then after that, Tom Weissenberger beat that record down in Chile. And, I always thought it should be done in a thermal flying site and California and well, in a valley called the Owens Valley seemed appropriate too. So I've been working on it for 6 years and finally have just learned the place enough, studied the weather enough, had the right equipment, the right mindset, and the right support team behind me. And boy, it happened.
For those people who are listening who aren't familiar with the Owens, I mean, it's got that reputation like some places do, but describe flying there to folks who haven't flown in the Owens.
Well, it's just, the lore of the Owens Valley has been around since, the early 70s. It's a magical place. I think of it sort of being as like the Mavericks of hang gliding locations, just big air, and you just need to respect it. It's beautiful, and it can be challenging and a little terrifying, and the conditions can be so strong. But my goodness, there's so much untapped potential there, and it's a place that and glider pilots don't seem to visit much anymore. It seems to have sort of dropped off the map for whatever reason. But goodness, it's a fabulous place to fly.
Well, it's great that pilots like yourselves and maybe some others are maybe getting back into it there. I was down in Texas with Larry Tudor, which was incredibly special for me to hang out with him and hear all of his stories. And that it used to be, like you said, you pull up to Walt's on a given day and it was packed.
Right. Yeah. There used to be. I mean, you watch the old footage of the place, hundreds of pilots showing up on a weekend, not even for comps, just, hey, we're flying the Owens, and that was it. And yeah, certainly Larry Tudor, put the place on the map, especially using Walt's on the Sierra side. And I'm thinking it's going to have a resurgence. I start seeing paraglider flights happening from there and other launches 9 Mile Road, and you think, okay, this could be a renaissance of the place, and I would love to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, for us on our side of things, we went out and did that bivvy across the Sierras up to the Oregon border in 2012, and just before that, I believe it was right around in that zone, in 2011, 2012, Dave Turner started flying in the Sierras, and we were hearing all these stories about him flying there in the summer, and that hadn't been done in like a decade.
Exactly.
It had been a long time since that was
Right.
going down, and so it's great to see that Owens is back on the map. I mean, we used to have world championships there and big comps.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that can happen again. When you talk about comps, I'm a mountain pilot. I gravitate towards, my home site is Crestline, California. And, I'm just flying up and down the mountain ranges all the time. And that sort of flying makes sense to me. I've done a couple comps, Big Spring and out in Florida, and honestly, the flatlands confuse me. I fly the ground and the wind, and people go, no, you got to fly the clouds. I go, what? All right, I guess. So I've got a lot to learn, but man, I think there's some interest in doing foot launch mountain flying comps again. In recent years, they've done some in Dinosaur, and they just had the Canadian Nationals. I did that last year in Kamloops, and that's my type of flying. I just really love that.
How did you get into all this absurdity, and give us a time frame?
Yeah, I had my first tandem flight in 1990, and it wasn't until 93 until I got my first hang glider. And I actually started off relatively slowly and played had different interests. And in '98, I tore my ACL playing basketball, and so that kind of sidelined. And I thought, you know what, this basketball stuff is just too dangerous, contact sport, and I played pretty hard, and so I just ended up focusing my attention more on hang gliding, and I got my hang 4 in '98, and just started doing cross country flying in 2000, and just it just really captured me. I just really loved it, and just mostly spent my time flying between Elsinore, a little bit of Torrey Pines and Crestline and Silmar up in LA. So local Southern California flying. But yeah, then turned my attention to more XC related tasks. So every time I would fly Crestline, I'd try to just go somewhere, and mostly out and back. And I find those so civilized to be able to take off, fly for 4 or 5 hours, go as far as you can away, and the chess game of how far out can I go and still make it back just really appealed to me. So every time I fly, that's my goal. And there's some really good big air to the east of Crestline that nobody really taps into. So when people are getting 6,000, 7,000 feet of Crestline, well, you're getting 11, 12, 14,000 over San Gorgonio or San Jacinto.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of been my training ground. And I think that's prepared me a bit for the Owens Valley too, because summer days can be pretty strong at Crestline.
So yeah, I mean, when you say that Marshall Elsinore is kind of rowdy, is that more in the kind of spring? Because in the summer it gets quite stable. Is that when you move to the other side and start flying out into the Mojave and stuff and flying in the desert?
Yeah, spring and fall are days where you can get up high enough to make the jump over the back. Summer you get high pressure and you get an inversion layer, but you can bust through that if you head east. And that's sort of something I've learned over the years, that the more you head east, the higher the mountains are, and you can crack through the inversion layer and bust out some good miles.
You said, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but you said on the day that you had the record from Walt's and you did the out and back, you kind of had the right, everything aligned, but you also said you had the right mindset. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah. So I've been looking for the right day, and you're looking for a day that's light variable at all elevations, or as many as you can. And I was fortunate. I look at the solstice as being my marker, the summer solstice. Obviously you're looking for the longest day. And so 20 days before and after the solstice is where I'm really focusing on the right day and what's going to be likely to give me the opportunity to set the out and back. And I'm friends with Rob McKenzie, and he and I have talked about this extensively. And we figure there's 6 days a year where it actually is possible to do it. I'm not a very aggressive pilot. I'm actually relatively conservative. I think my strength is in endurance. I don't really have a problem flying for 10 hours, but it's also, I try to be, as aggressive as I have to be to race, because you're racing the sun, but I also try to make the smart moves, be patient when I have to be patient, and push when I have to push or am able to push. So, I fly with oxygen, even though the highest I got was over 17,000 feet. But for the most part, I try to stay low and push above 12,000 feet. I noticed that day was pretty turbulent, and, the Owens can eat your lunch, man. So why spend time climbing up through that mess when you can just drive and just make short climbs, then drive and short climbs. And so, and then climb to the top when you have to make a crossing. And so just try to be smart about it. And I actually changed my tactic this year. And I think that was the reason for my success too, is in the previous years, I had been told that you don't want to go off the ends of the whites in the north past Boundary Peak, just because there's no good can come from that. And so I would launch Walt and head 15.2 miles south to Alancha, and that's where I would get my first turn point. So then with that amount of distance, I could go north and just go to Boundary Peak as my turn point, just dab into Nevada just because I thought it was amusing so I put my turn point in Nevada and turned around. But then coming back, you run into the southerlies at the end of the day. And last year I was 7 miles short after 10.5 hours in the air. And that was just a brutal decision to look at the numbers and see that I needed like 18-1 to make goal and into a headwind, and then to watch those numbers just go south and go, oh no. And to make the decision, I was heading across the Owens Valley Dry Lake, and the sun's set behind the Sierras, and I've got 20 minutes to go, and just to pull it, at the end, just going, no, it's I don't want to sit here all night for a long retrieve. And just make that decision was pretty tough, but the numbers weren't looking right. And I thought, well, I'll try again next year. And that's kind of it. So this year I just looked into the idea of starting at Walt's, tagging a point at 395, and then turning back around, go back to Walt's and climb up and go north and go off the end of Boundary Peak and across, to the other side and see what was there. And I had never flown that area before, but I studied it for hours on Google Earth and just watch XC skies and see where the triggers likely were going to be. And oh goodness, it couldn't have gone better. I got drilled going off the end, and I thought, this is why people don't do this. Sustained 2,000 feet per minute down and going, shoot, I'm an idiot. And yet, you're doing that at the middle of the day. And so you're going, okay, well, there's got to be something. And sure enough, rewarded with a 700 up on the other side, and just rode it, and then got my turn point. And, people were curious that, you see my track log and you can find it online. I didn't turn right around and head back to a Boundary because the winds through there can just blow you straight into Nevada,
Sure.
And it's that.
Yeah, it's a real prominent Venturi through there.
Absolutely. And it reminds me a lot of the Cajon Pass and, at Crestline. So you go, okay, well, so I played it west a bit and flew over Benton. And so I only lost 1,000 feet coming back across to the whites, which, I told Mike Meyer and Steve Pearson, I made about 3 good decisions and 3 poor decisions. I got lucky 3 times and unlucky 3 times. And none of the bad things or poor choices I made, cost me.
Really penalized
it really penalized me. And the good choices made up for those enough that I will say, yes, I did get lucky, but I also made some good choices too. And that was one of them, to head back, to play the winds and get back established pretty quickly on the whites and keep going. So
I often think, lucky, we could say the same thing for a Kriegel, but there are pilots that create their own, I mean, how can he get lucky that much? Right.
Right.
so he's created, and it seems like with you, 6 years in a sense of trying this and planning it, and then to me, it's all identifying the day. And how far out were you looking at this day?
Well, that's the cool thing is obviously I've been studying. Like I said, I studied the weather 20 days before, but I saw Friday, the 19th on Tuesday, and I went, oh, that's the day.
That's the day.
I saw it that 3 or 4 days out, and I called my buddy George Stebbins and said, hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing on Friday? And he came back the next day and said, oh yeah, I think, and none of the days are ever perfect. You don't get a 10 out of a 10, but it was certainly an 8 out of 10. And I thought, that's all I need. And then the next day on Wednesday, I went, often you see the day deteriorate or it's not what it used to be. But it held, and it looked like it still could be good. And then on Thursday, I said, it's a go. And so, yeah, drove up Thursday night and was prepared bright and early Friday morning, and even got.
And were you by yourself?
Yeah. Actually, George Stebbins joined me that day. He was just going to do a free flight. So, but yeah, he and I were the only pilots flying that day. And yeah, but
man, where were the paragliders? Light and variable, up to 18 grand. It sounds perfect.
Oh, I expected to see some. Now I did launch early at 9:41 in the morning. But sure, it was certainly launchable for paraglider pilots. I thought somebody's going to bust something good today.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you that. So earlier this year, I think it was kind of early June, there was a couple really good days, but downwinders, they wouldn't have been out and backs. And I agree with you 100%. There's nothing sexier than landing where he took off.
Right.
That's just fantastic. But are guys like you and your crew and this kind of, let's call it a little mini renaissance, or hopefully, I hope that's what's happening. They had Revis and those guys had 2 back-to-back days where they were launching 9 Mile. And those of you listening, I realize we're throwing on terms that if you don't know the Owens, that doesn't mean much to you. But the main launch is Walt's. It's on the Sierra side. You typically fly from there up to kind of near Bishop, and then you cross over to the Whites, which is the next range to the east. But 9 Mile is further down south, so it can be a better start if you're just going one way, because you can get a whole bunch of ground covered on the Sierra side, then you cross, get a bit more ground covered on the Whites, and then you keep going. And so these guys are, I think Revis had a couple days where kind of in the low 300K. Your flight 368K in light and variable in an out and back, which is much harder work than just winging it off downwind. Are you flying those? Are you thinking about big days where you can connect with like the Toya bees and just keep going?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I've got my sights on that now. I mean, honestly, the out and back just has captured my imagination for years. And I think it's the second coolest hang gliding record you can get, obviously behind the open distance. In my opinion, I just think there's something just really cool about saying, no, I started, and specifically, actually, to be clear, I did get 2 world records that day. It was the declared out and back, and then they gave me the open because it happened to be longer. My declared happened to be longer than the previous open. So that's pretty sweet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is super sweet.
Yeah. So, but yeah, just to be able to say, yeah, I'm going to go to this, I'm going to take off here. I'm going to go to this specific spot, this 400 meter radius circle. I'm going to tag it and then come back to where I started. So, but to your point, yeah, I mean, there's still big miles to be had out there. And on a day where you can get off Walt's or even 9 Mile for that matter. Yeah. I spent some time at 9 Mile in the morning and go, yeah, this is launchable with a hang glider. I mean, it's a hike in, obviously, but if you started there, then you get to run all those miles north and then get to Walt's pretty early too, and just keep going. And so, yeah, there's some 300 plus miles out there to be had easy. Well, not easy, but it's possible.
Right. It's there. I like how Will Gadd talks about the Sierras, that it's one of the most complex environments you could possibly fly in. And I think there are others, but there are not many places that are more complex in terms of just the micro stuff you're deling with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a very rowdy place.
It's a rowdy place, and it changes. There's some patterns that show up that you can kind of anticipate, but you kind of go, okay, what elevation am I going to be flying? What time of day? So XC Skies is a tool that we just didn't have that back in the day. And so to be able to just see these trends, these patterns emerge, I think, again, the Owens Valley is untapped. We're missing out on some big flights happening there. And I can't wait to see other people try it. And I think my plan is to just try to beat the record every year. And I'm not done. I want to. It's just pure joy for me out there. I just love it. I'm not too old. I'm 53 right now, and I've got some adventures left in me.
Yeah, you do. Let's transition temporarily here to, I think you have maybe the most interesting job I've ever heard of. Tell us how you make a living.
This is goofy. As I mentioned, I honestly, I lead a charmed life. My day job, I work as a as a comedy juggler. So I work with another guy. We have a 2-man comedy juggling team. We tour the world, primarily the States, and doing our show. And my buddy John and I met in '86 at a juggling convention, and at the time just in college, and going, hey, what are you doing after college? I don't know. What are you doing? Hey, let's throw a show together and see if we can do that for a couple of years, and then we'll go get our real jobs. Well, that was 32 years ago. And within the first 2 years, we got on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson twice. We were in the Addams Family movie. If you saw that, there's a scene where Gomez and Uncle Fester pull out these daggers and start throwing them back and forth. That was us. We stunt doubled for Raul Julia. I was Gomez, and John was Christopher Lloyd's part, Uncle Fester. Shortly after that, we did a Royal Command performance for Prince Charles. We've performed at the White House. Recently, we did a couple of runs on America's Got Talent. A lot of people might have seen us on that. We just last week we were on Penn and Teller's Fool Us. So it's this crazy, crazy gig. We juggle chainsaws and stun guns and rat traps and, ridiculous stuff. The name of our show, we're called The Passing Zone. If you have a moment and want to be amused, go to passingzone.com and see all the ridiculous crap that we throw around. And but it's a joy. I get to make people laugh for a living, and I just feel, as silly as juggling is, to throw things up in the air and try to catch them, I'm bringing a small amount of joy into the world, and that just feels great.
And have you guys been together 32 years?
That's it. Yeah.
That's an incredible partnership.
It really is. I'm so proud of our partnership. 32 years together, and still enjoying it and appreciating every day.
How much training goes into this job?
A surprising amount. If you knew how many thousands of hours are behind every routine that you see us do, you'd just go, you guys are insane. So we practice every day of the week, usually 3 to 4 hours a day. And a lot of that is, honing our skills, but it's also developing new skills and new routines. We have this warehouse space between our homes. John is up in Hermosa Beach, and I'm down in Tustin in Orange County. And we have this spot, a warehouse space that we get together. We call it our clubhouse. And as you might imagine, with the current pandemic, there's not a lot of call for live entertainment. So
right.
Our lives have, in a way, been put on hold. Our next gig, let's see, it's July now, 2020. Our next gig isn't until February of 2021. So,
which is also probably still a maybe, considering how things are going, right?
Oh, for sure. I think that one's a definite maybe. So we've had to pivot a bit, and so we've turned our warehouse space into a television studio. Effectively, we're doing live stream shows, virtual shows from there, and our primary market is the corporate events market. So, we stream out our show, and we try to think of creative ways to get people involved. Our show definitely is heavily audience interactive. So we figure out a way to get a mannequin and get an iPad that we hang on the mannequin's face, and then we FaceTime somebody on the Zoom call and get them to hold their phones right up to their face. And so all of a sudden now they're in our warehouse space, and we can talk to them and interact with them and just tell them to hold really still, and they're really good at that. So anyway, it's a way to connect with people and try to break up their day. I mean, we're all just struggling with this and trying to figure out ways to continue doing what we do best, and like I said, bring a little joy.
Sure. Yeah. So you mentioned, Johnny Carson and Penn and Teller and playing for the Queen. Tell me about is it more stressful? How have you guys learned how to deal with that in terms of the pressure?
Well, sure. People ask me, okay, do you get nervous before the show? And I just say, well, yeah, every show. And there's nothing worse than being nervous and juggling. I mean, your skill level, especially doing live TV, goodness, doing America's Got Talent with, 14 million people watching you. If you drop a chainsaw, there's no recovering from that. I mean, there's so
that's when you have to be really good at comedy.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, you after years of working together with John, we've just figured out ways to joke about it and make light of it. And, but yeah, nervousness to me just means I care. I want every show to be as good as it can possibly be. And so, but once you get going and the audience starts reacting and appreciating what you do and laughing, those go away, and we feed off of that energy and we give it right back. And it's just awesome. And it's interesting because there's this interesting parallel, I think, between hang gliding, paragliding as well, and juggling. And that is, I think they're both really misunderstood. If your listeners are going to go, okay, he's a professional juggler, they imagine me in big floppy shoes and a red nose and a circus, that right. Sort of thing. But it's not at all that. I mean, we kind of model ourselves a little bit off of like a Penn and Teller, magicians who wear suits on stage and are, very comedic based and stuff. But, in the hang gliding world, you tell people you're a hang glider pilot or a paraglider pilot, and they just go, oh, you've got a death wish, you jump off a cliff and you fly down, and they don't understand the beauty and the intricacies of the sport. And I just feel this need, this like almost a PSA to say, no, here's what it is. You need to understand that we're finding thermals. We're staying in the air for hours. We're launching and landing often when and where we want to. And it's a much different sport than it was in the 70s. And it was for that reason that I really wanted to do something to reach out to the public. And my airport is, I fly out of all the time, is John Wayne Airport in Orange County here. And so in 2008, I created a hang gliding exhibit there. And it actually is still there today. So if you go to the airport and look up, there are 4 hang gliders hanging from the ceiling above the baggage claims there. And it's a way of showing people, because the preconception of what a hang glider looks like, it's the 70s, bamboo,
right. kind of a kite-ish.
Yeah, exactly. And this, things strung together with duct tape and, whatever. So to see these carbon fiber, sexy wings that just look astonishing, and just the new fabrics that, manufacturers are using now, I think it's just a way to show that, hey, this is a sport that's matured and it is a real thing now. And so I'm proud that that's still out there as a way to share the sport, even subconsciously with the public in general, as a way of telling them, hey, we're not what we used to be. This is something that you should look into if it interests you.
Do you think that your juggling career and all the training you've done, has that impacted how you fly, how you approach flying, how you train?
Yeah, most definitely. I am a huge believer. I mean, I just see it every day, what practice can do and prepared practice can do. I spend hours working on juggling tricks that, some of them just for me, things that will never be in the show because they're just too damn hard. But just focused practice, and you get better, and you try different things, and you experiment, and so I I definitely think there's a nice crossover of skill sets between hang gliding and juggling, and the way I look at it.
You also look like a really fit person. Do you feel like that plays a part in your ability to fly 10 hours and be cool?
Yeah, well, there's one I tell people all the time. You don't often see an overweight juggler, and that's primarily because they can't afford to eat. But
I bet you put that in the
yeah,
show.
exactly. My favorite one is what's the difference between a large pizza and a juggler? That's just a large pizza can feed a family of four. Uh, but no, I mean, there's obviously a physical aspect to juggling, and I think, yeah, I mean, it's a very active thing, and I think that has helped my ability to stay fit, and certainly the endurance of that has transitioned nicely over to being able to stay in the air for 10 hours. I at the end, I was fresh. I was, and had I been short again on the 19th, the 20th looked like it was flyable. And I was just going, okay, if I'm short, I'm going again. Tomorrow, I'll be back at it. And so that's, if I have a skill set, I hang out with Zippy. I hang out with, Johnny Duran, some of the best pilots in the world. And, they are amazing at what they do. So if I have a skill set, I think it's staying in the air for a long time and being all right with it. So
being patient
and just, I'm not flying super fast. I'm just out there to beat the sun, not beat another pilot. And just try to be smart. What I maybe lack in skills, I try to make up. I'm flying with oxygen, so I'm thinking clearly the whole time. And there's a lot of pilots who go, "Oh, you don't need oxygen. You're not going to be that high for that long." But just that little edge to go, okay, I'm thinking clearly. That's super important.
Yeah, I mean that's the cowboy side of no oxygen. I think has been long left behind, which is a good thing. We know now that our brains don't function all that well when we're tall. So any little advantage we can get is a good thing.
Yeah, I support that theory for sure.
Yeah. What? How has flying changed your life?
It's
You've been at this a while.
I've been at this a while, right? And I think the community is just fabulous. I really seem to connect with pilots. It may surprise many people. You'll see me on stage and you go, "Oh my gosh, look how funny he is," or "Look how relaxed." I am an introvert. I'm honestly just a person who recharges when I'm by myself. And hang gliding has allowed me to do it. Now I really enjoy being social. I love the community, the juggling community and the hang gliding community. I thrive on that, but then I find I can only do that for a while. But it's just a beautiful gathering of people and personalities, and I consider my hang gliding group to be the people I choose to be with, and I enjoy it very much. So yeah, it's shaped so many of my my desires, my passions, my dreams, things I want to achieve, and it just provides me an outlet that brings me peace, and it's in the sky is where I want to be.
Is it been like that from the beginning? Have you had any kind of ups and downs, or you sound like you're uber passionate about it now. Has it been like that kind of through your flying career?
I think it really has been. In the beginning, I didn't have the ability financially to pursue it as much as I wanted to. John and I were just getting started in our careers together. We were on the road quite a bit in those beginning years, so I didn't have that opportunity. But then the fact that performing sort of transitioned to more out and backs, where I'd go to Vegas and then come back for 3 days and head to Orlando and then back for 2 days. And so I'd had more the long outs doing 2 weeks on the road or 3 weeks on a cruise ship or something, and tours that had me away from home seemed to sort of transition into one-nighters. And that changed things for me too. And then it became a little bit more lucrative when we were getting into the corporate market. So that allowed me to have the financial freedom to go explore hang gliding some more. And, I think I just love everything about it. I hear people just talk about, it takes me so long to set up my wing and so long to pack it up and head up the hill and do this and that. And I think I love putting my wing up on my car. I love unzipping that bag every time and creating this magical thing that comes out of this tube that I'm creating. It's just this little, my personal rocket ship that's carbon fiber and sexy, and then flying it around for 3, 4, 5 hours and landing. And then I love taking it apart and putting it back in its bag. And I don't know. It just seems, and not to get too existential.
It's all ridiculous and magical, isn't it?
It really is.
Ridiculous.
We've been looking for 200,000 years. Man has been looking up in the air and wishing they could be a bird, wishing we could fly and soar. And it hasn't been until the last 50 years that was even an option. So It's just, we are living in the future, and it is a magical time to be alive. And I feel like I owe it to all of those humans, 200,000 years of humans, to do this, because they didn't get a chance to. And I do. And I want to celebrate that and do that for them. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I honestly feel that way. We are lucky. We are leading charmed lives to be able to do this. And I feel an obligation to educate people, to allow them to know that this is a possibility, simply because I don't believe they understand it. So if they don't know what a thermal is, and that a thermal, every day the sun's out, is out there to carry us up. And that's hard to wrap your mind around when you don't see it. So these track logs that we post, these, your social media, the things you're doing, Gavin, I mean, you are changing the world one podcast at a time. And honestly, I truly believe this, to share this joy with as many people as possible. No, it's not for everyone. Now, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
I don't say everyone should do this, but those who do should at least know about it.
Right. Yeah, we were having this discussion on the very long drive to Texas, or coming back. I can't remember which one, but it's interesting. I live in a place, I live in Sun Valley in Idaho, which is just filled with a valley of go-getters, like outdoor enthusiasts, backcountry skiers and kayakers and, hiking and fly fishing. And, these are people that really get after it, and they live there because they want to be outside. And they all know, lots of these people are my very good friends, and they know what I do, and they don't want to do it. It's really interesting.
Isn't it fascinating?
How can you not want to do this?
Right. And again, that baffles me, because it is so glorious. I have become friends with Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller, and he had been talking for years about wanting to fly with me. And I said, dude, you need to do it. And he weighed 332 pounds a few years back. He lost 100 pounds. So he got down to 232, and he's still around there today. So a couple years ago, I took him with me, and we did a tandem flight together, and he just dug it. He's done a whole podcast on it, and I had him do a little magic trick up there, pull out a card, and we had a drone following us. So there's some great footage of that. And, it's just one of those things for people who want to do it. I love that we can make it accessible to them. But you're right. For some people, it's just not their thing. And I get it. It's not for everyone. And I don't, they don't need to do it, because I think, it's awesome. But,
right. Yeah. Well, you have the declared record and the out and back record. And then right before we started recording, you've got like 6 other world records. You've got more world records than anybody, man. So are these all in in joggling. What is it called?
Yeah. So, okay, this is about as ridiculous as it can get. There is a sport out there called joggling, and it's spelled Joggling. So amuse yourself and type in joggling into a Google search, and you're going to see a picture of me joggling with 5 balls. That was actually in the front page of the Guinness Book of World Records. It's juggling and running or jogging at the same time. So I have the world record for 100 meters, 5-ball juggling, and 3-ball juggling for 100 meters. Now this is a fun story. I was lucky enough to do a show with Usain Bolt last year.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was cool. We were doing a gig in Mexico City, and he was on the same bill. And I approached him afterwards, and I said, "Hey, man, good to meet you. We have something in common." And he's like, "Yeah, man, what's that?" And I said, "Well, we both hold the world record for 100 meters." "What you talking about, man?" So I go,
"Come on, let's go, man, toe to toe, bud."
I said, I hold the world record for running 100 meters and juggling at the same time. And he goes, "No. How fast you do it?" I go, "How fast do you think I did?" He goes, I don't know, 15 seconds. I go, 11.6. He goes, "No, man."
You did it in 11.6 seconds?
Yeah, 11.6. So I used to be on the...
Dude!
I know. It doesn't slow you down too much. So I used to be a decathlete in college. And so I was a runner before a juggler or a pilot. So...
Holy cow. Is there video of this? I got to see the video of this.
Yeah, it's on, do a search, do a YouTube search, and you'll find some crazy TV shows.
I thought you were going to say like 25 or something. That is, you're fast, man. Holy cow.
And then with 5 balls, it's like 13.8, something like that. So it's...
oh my God.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's another example of the most ridiculous world record one can have is in a sport called joggling. Now, there was another. I also happen to hold the world record for chainsaw juggling, most catches with another person, and the record I'm most proud of that we no longer have, but John and I set the world record for club passing back in '93. We were the first humans to pass 11 clubs back and forth. So those are the bowling pin shaped things. So there's some Russians that had the record for many years, and at 10, and we were the first to achieve 11 club passing between 2 people, and that held for about a decade, maybe a little longer, and then some more Russians came and took that from us. So,
what kind of training would you have to do to get it back? Like, how many hours went into that 93 record?
Oh, again, thousands of hours. Yeah. When you just think of, all the prep and all the training and stuff. Yeah. So there are not enough hours left in my life to allow me to get it back. Yeah. We're noticing at our age that our reflexes aren't what they used to be. And for technical reasons, I won't go into the details of it, but there's a new method for passing clubs that will bore your listeners. But just say it's a little bit like if John and I are playing tennis with wood rackets and everybody else is playing with our
okay.
So
Gotcha. and I know this is a flying show, but this is just so fascinating. So I used to run chainsaw on a hot shot crew. Are you throwing real chainsaws?
So that's the deal. Full disclosure, yes, we are throwing real chainsaws. Now I have ground down the teeth on the chains. Yeah. That's the other thing. I run them idled up, so those chains are spinning as we're juggling them.
So there's fuel in them and everything.
Oh yeah. Awful, and they're loud, and they're they're the worst. But it's what people want to see, and so we're there to give it to them.
Carnage.
Yeah.
Oh, we love our carnage. That must have been after a particularly bad night of drinking that you guys came up with that idea.
Well, the funny thing is, it's the audience. You can't help. You get hecklers. "Oh, juggle chainsaws," and you're like, "Oh, good grief. Yeah, okay, yeah." But it's one of those things where after a while you just go, "That's what they want." And so you go, "Okay, well, how do we do this in a way that's actually worthwhile?" So John and I try to find the funny in everything we do on stage. And one of the things we thought was, what about the juxtaposition between the idea of these manly, mean, awful chainsaws and ballet? So we got ourselves some purple tights and we
Oh
got
my
ourselves some
God.
Husqvarnas, and we started working on a piece called the Chainsaw Ballet. So
Oh my
we
God.
juggle chainsaws and dance around the stage and throw these roaring things back and forth as we're dancing around and prancing and being goofy. So it's hilarious and dangerous and ridiculous, and it's my job.
What an awesome job. Do you come up with, so, especially during this whole, coronavirus situation, it was, I don't come up with very good ideas unless I'm out doing stuff, so I do a lot of writing, and, if I get my version of a writer's block or something, usually a bike ride or a walk or something will help that. Where do your ideas come from? Do you get them from when you're flying? Do you get them how do you guys keep creative after 32 years?
That's a very good question, and that ends up being sort of the most important part of our job, is coming up with new things. And we're inspired by so many different areas. One of the nice things about flying is I don't think about juggling while I'm flying. I don't do anything but flying, so that it becomes a nice escape for me. But John and I that's perhaps the most important part of us getting together every day, is the part of our practice where we're not throwing things back and forth, but we're just talking. We have a section in our warehouse space where we sit and we talk about what we saw on YouTube that day, or what we saw, what's in the news, how to be topical, how do we change, because juggling, honestly, by itself, I mean, like I said, we have world records in juggling because we spent so much time trying to be the best in the world at it. But nobody cares. Nobody cares whether we're juggling 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 clubs back and forth. It just doesn't matter. What they want is a connection with us and our show and our senses of humor. And they want an insight into who we are as people and what we are as a team and how that works. And so, recently we sometimes just try to combine goofy skills. Like I've learned how to throw knives. And John's learned how to juggle upside down. And so we created this piece recently where he's, all right, this is going to sound, just follow me here. Take a moment. So John juggles upside down on a swinging pendulum back and forth. So he's hanging by his ankles with gravity boots, swinging back and forth. I stand on one side of him as he's swinging back and forth in front of me with the target on the other side of him. So
you're hucking knives across his plane.
Exactly, right. And I'm blindfolded. So he's got to tell me when to throw.
What?
Yeah. And so we thought, well, this is cool, but it's not audience participation. So we thought, hey, let's get somebody from the audience and join him on the pendulum. So now we get a female volunteer that stands next to him, swinging back and forth. So she's going through the path of the knives. And we thought, okay, he'll tell me, and I've got a target with a balloon on it on the other side of both of them. And so he'll tell me when to throw in order to save his own life. And we tell her, you tell me where to throw in order to pop that balloon. And then that balloon happens to be attached to a trigger mechanism that launches a pie into another volunteer's face. So this is ridiculous. So clearly we have a lot of free time on our hands. I think that's what we're discovering here. So, if I could pop it with an 8 throw. So he gets swinging, he's going now, and I throw a knife and she's like higher, and then now. So back and forth, and finally pop the balloon and the pie gets launched in the face, and we're all happy. It all ends well.
What an awesome job. You guys just get to sit around and fart around all day and have fun.
That is it. I get to go.
I realize it's not farting around. You're obviously training, but what a great, and creative.
It is an amazing thing in a beautiful country where one can make a living as a professional juggler and get away with it.
Yeah, you guys are winning for sure. You're winning. Okay. Because it is a flying show, I'll bring it back with just one question, and then I really appreciate your time. This has been a blast. If you could, you've heard the show, you've heard me ask this a million times. If you could rewind the clock, sounds like to maybe 90, maybe 93, because you learned in 90, you did a tandem, but kind of think back to your 50-hour self. What would you change? What advice would you wish you've gotten, or anything you would have done differently?
I just have to thank those who brought this sport into my life. Joe Greblo, Andy Beam, Rob McKenzie, those instructors, they have changed my life, honestly. And I have appreciated hang gliding from every step of the way, from those very first flights where you're just getting a foot off the ground for 10 feet. How magical is that? I mean, honestly, it's been a slow progression. Maybe I would have chosen to try to figure out a way to do it faster, but you know what? I've appreciated the journey the whole way. And honestly, like I said, I'm leading a charmed life, and I just want to share that hopefully give that to people who haven't discovered it yet. So they can do the same if that appeals to them.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of gratitude, and that's about the most important thing there is. So keep entertaining. This is just what a fun talk, and congratulations on this amazing flight and achievement. And hopefully that's just the first of many, and can't wait to share some sky with you soon. Man. So that would be great. I'm sure our paths will cross if they haven't already. We were thinking they maybe had out in Marshall someday, but another X Alps is coming up next year, so I'll be out in your neck of the woods training this winter. But all the best to you, Owen, and thank you so much for sharing this crazy these crazy years of yours with us.
Gavin, thank you so much, brother. I'm honored to be with you today, and keep doing what you're doing. It's really needed and appreciated. And cheers.
Cheers, bud. If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music, and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do, and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.